So what are all of these and what do they do? Well, that's exactly what we're going to be looking at in today's video. See, with the rising popularity of gaming, a lot more people want to build themselves a gaming rig. And people are scared to build their own rig because, well, parts are expensive. And in this video, the first in our new series of computers for noobs, we're going to be going over all the parts of computers that you might be dealing with. So make sure to stick around to the end so that you can understand how everything works. So there are 8 basic components that you're going to find in every single computer. There's several extra ones that you can put in there that you don't need to, and we'll go over all of the big ones today. So for these components, I'm going to sort them into 4 categories: necessary, highly recommended, just for funsies, and peripherals. We're going to start off by going over the category of necessary computer components. The first thing in our necessary components is the CPU, which acts in essence as the brain of the computer. It manages everything and it's got its little grubby mitts inside of everything. As PC enthusiasts, we're going to run into 2 CPU manufacturers, Intel and AMD. Now stick with me because this might get a little bit complicated. See, each manufacturer makes a bunch of CPUs. Lucky for us, they use very similar naming schemes for both of them. Intel's naming convention starts with an I and is followed by a string of numbers and sometimes a letter or 2. AMD, on the other hand, uses Ryzen, which is followed by a string of numbers and occasionally a letter right at the end. They use a very similar numbering system, using 3, 5, 7, and 9 to denote the rank of the CPU in their lineup, with 3 being the lowest and 9 being the highest. Both AMD and Intel follow that Ryzen or I with a string of numbers. The first 1 or 2 numbers usually denote the generation. So for an example, using Intel, their i5 12600K would be a Intel i5 12th gen. And using AMD as an example, their Ryzen 5 5600X would be a 5th gen Ryzen 5. Now the next numbers denote the model of the CPU within their category, so their i5, i7, Ryzen 5, Ryzen 7, etc. Bigger number means more better. For the letters, Intel has a couple of things that they'll use. They use T, F, K, and KF. T means it's optimized for efficiency, K means it's overclockable, F means it has no integrated graphics, and KF means that it has both no integrated graphics and is overclockable. For Ryzen, all of their chips are overclockable, so none of their numbers mean that they are overclockable. However, they use X, XT, G, and X3D. Their X means it has a factory overclock, their XT means it has a bigger factory overclock, and with the 5th gen Ryzen chips, a spec bump. X3D, which basically just gives the chip superpowers, and G, which gives the chip integrated graphics. Now for the X3D, I'm not going to explain it. It's a little bit too complicated to go into in this video, but if you guys want to see a video on how that works, comment that down below and I will make one at some point for you guys. When looking at your CPU options, there's a couple specs you want to consider. The things that I usually look at are cores, if it has hyperthreading or SMT, depending on the brand that you choose, and the CPU's clock speed. The cores are basically mini individual CPUs within your CPU that perform a set of tasks. Hyperthreading uses computer black magic to basically double the workload of a core, and its clock speed is how fast the core runs, measured in gigahertz. With the core count and the clock speed, bigger means better. With the hyperthreading or SMT, all you gotta know is you probably want it. Now the next component we're gonna look at is the CPU cooler. Now there's 2 main types of CPU coolers. There's air coolers and there's liquid coolers. Now for liquid cooling, there's 2 types of liquid cooling. There's custom loops and there's AIOs. AIOs, or all-in-one liquid coolers, are what you as a beginner are going to want to use if you're deciding to go down the liquid cooling route because they are a lot less complicated and don't need any maintenance. Custom loops, on the other hand, look amazing, but are not very beginner friendly, so I would probably avoid those as a beginner, unless you want to risk damaging all of your expensive components just for the sake of looking cool, which, you know, I respect you if you do. Honestly, it's your choice though. Just don't say I didn't warn you. Now, as far as picking a CPU cooler goes, each CPU cooler has a wattage rating, except for custom loops, because those are generally powerful enough that you don't really need them. To see if your cooler will work for your CPU, look at the wattage rating of the CPU cooler and look at the wattage of your CPU. If the wattages match up, or if the CPU cooler is higher than that of the CPU, you should be good to go. Next up on our essential parts list is the motherboard, which if you think about it is kind of the nervous system of the computer. It brings the information processed in the CPU to every other part of the computer. When buying your motherboard, make sure that it's compatible with your CPU. The best thing I can recommend for doing this is to go to pcpartpicker.com, input your CPU like so, and then go check for compatible motherboards because it has an automatic compatibility filter, which will help show you if the motherboard that you want to pick is compatible. And real talk, I got introduced to computers through PC Part Picker. I would spend hours a day when I was 13 or 14 just throwing together builds on PC Part Picker and kind of figuring out how things worked. So I would highly recommend any beginners just go spend like an hour or 2 on their build section because you can go spec out your own build and learn a little bit about the computer parts and kind of what goes where and how it all goes together. There's a couple sizes when it comes to motherboards. There's eATX, ATX, Micro ATX, and Mini ITX. Now the motherboard is by far the scariest part to look at for a beginner because there's so much on it and you don't know what goes where. In general, and I know there's a few exceptions, most plugs will only fit into certain places. So you don't have to be too worried about that. And while the motherboard is delicate, I wouldn't be too worried about it, especially as a beginner. Don't let it scare you away from our community because it's the best. Now, next up in the essential components is the RAM. RAM stands for Random Access Memory, and is essentially your computer's short-term memory, as the name suggests. There's a couple generations that you'll probably run into while building a computer. DDR3, DDR4, and DDR5. They are not compatible with each other, so make sure you get the right one for your CPU and motherboard combination. Your RAM is going to be measured in a couple of ways. You've got gigabytes for the amount of it, megahertz for the speed, and your cache latency, or CL, for your latency, which is basically how long it takes the information to get from the RAM to the CPU. DDR3 RAM is the oldest RAM that you'll probably run into, and it is by far the slowest. If you can, avoid it. If not, oh well. It's compatible with 4th gen Intel and older and any AMD FX CPUs, which I would recommend avoiding. DDR4 is the middle child between 3 and 5, and while it isn't current gen, in my opinion, it's still worth buying into because AMD just released a bunch of new CPUs compatible with DDR4, so I would look into it. DDR4 is compatible with 5th through 12th gen Intel, even though they didn't make a bunch of 5th gen Intel CPUs, and with 1st through 5th gen Ryzen processors. In my opinion, for a budget gaming PC, it is probably your best option. By budget, I'm talking about less than 500 bucks. DDR5 is the newest and fastest of the three that I've mentioned. I highly recommend getting a DDR5 system if possible, because you're buying into the current generation of RAM. It'll probably be current for the next 5 to 7 years and be more than competitive for years to come. It's compatible with 12th gen Intel and newer, along with 7th gen Ryzen and newer. For the next part, we're gonna look at the power supply, or the PSU. The power supply, as the name suggests, supplies power to the components. It plugs into your computer and just gives it all the juice that it really needs. Power supplies are rated based off of their wattage and their efficiency, which uses the 80+ system. 80+ ratings go from 80+ white to 80+ titanium, with white being the lowest tier and titanium being the highest tier. I would go for a bronze, silver, or gold if you can, because those are usually affordable and work perfectly fine. I would very much recommend getting a PSU that is rated by 80+, because you might accidentally buy a bomb if you're not. And no, I'm not kidding about that, because if it's not rated by the 80+ system, then it probably wasn't good enough to not explode on them. If you want to make sure you're buying a good PSU, then check out the PSU tier list, which I will link down below. To figure out how big your PSU needs to be or how many watts it's capable of delivering, then go to a PSU calculator from somebody like Newegg, which offers a decent one. Now, it's time for our second category, the highly recommended section. These are parts that, while not technically necessary for your system, I would very much recommend that you use them because your system will not run as you intend without them. First off is storage. Now, there's two main types of storage that you are going to run into while building a PC in 2024. You've got your hard drives, and then you've got your SSDs. Your NVMe SSD is going to be the fastest SSD that you can get, and while they are expensive, they are very much worth it on a modern system if your computer supports it. Not all computers support it, but anything Intel 6th gen or newer should. If you can't get an NVMe SSD, I would recommend going with a SATA SSD. SATA SSDs are going to be way faster than hard drives, and while yes, slower than your NVMe SSD, it still makes a huge difference. And we're talking by a massive gap. If you can't afford either, or you're looking for some extra storage, a hard drive might be a good option. It's got a physical spinny disk inside, which stores data on it. And while yes, I know some of you guys are probably commenting by now that, hey, you need storage to run a computer. No, you don't. You can actually boot it directly off the network, and while granted you do have to have storage set on a separate PC for that to work, you can still do it. So I'm not gonna count this as mandatory because, well, technically it isn't. Now, for our next highly recommended component, we have the graphics card, or as a lot of people call them, GPUs. Now, a GPU is necessary for your system, but not a graphics card. A GPU stands for graphical processing unit, and a lot of CPUs have onboard iGPUs. Not all of them, but a lot of them. However, a graphics card, while it does have a GPU in it, it also has dedicated VRAM, or video memory, which is your graphics card short-term memory, and helps to deliver a ton more performance to your gaming computer. Now, there's three manufacturers of graphics cards that you're probably going to run into today. You've got Intel, you've got AMD, and you've got the most popular, NVIDIA. If possible, as a beginner, avoid Intel because there are some issues that they're still trying to work out as they are brand new, just like you. So at that point, that leaves us two options, AMD and NVIDIA. NVIDIA offers GT, GTX, and RTX graphics cards. GT is the lowest end, and I wouldn't bother with them if you can afford to. GTX is a little bit older, but that being said, there's still a bunch of usable GTX cards. One of my personal favorite budget GPUs is the GTX 1660 Super or 1660 Ti, which performs pretty well. RTX is the newest, generally the fastest, and supports ray tracing, which is this relatively new, super demanding graphical processing task that not all GPUs are capable of delivering. Now, on the other side of this coin, you've got AMD. Now, AMD is kind of known for just brute forcing their way into performance by throwing way more VRAM than you need at the card and just hoping it sticks. and usually they aren't great upon launch, but with driver updates, they tend to get a lot better. That being said, AMD cards tend to depreciate like crazy, so you can find some great deals as cards get older. And in my opinion, AMD is the price to performance king. For all you AMD fanboys, I'm one of you guys too. I don't hate on AMD, I'm just calling it as I see it. I'm sorry. Now, next up on our highly recommended components, we have the case, which houses and protects all of your PC components. It also facilitates airflow and has the biggest aesthetic effect on your computer. There's 4 sizes that you're gonna run into: full towers, mid towers, mini towers, and SFF, or small form factor. Full towers will support eATX motherboards and smaller. Mid towers will usually support ATX and smaller. Mini towers will support micro ATX and smaller. And SFF, or small form factor, will support ITX, the baby of the boards. When buying, make sure that the case supports your motherboard size, otherwise you'll have a small issue on your hands. Also, read the reviews, because there's not a real standard for judging cases, so just see what everybody else thinks of them. Things to consider while buying them are the cable management room in the back and the aesthetics of the case. If you like how it looks and it's got good space for cable management, then go right ahead. Now, onto the Just for Funsies portion of this video. Just because they're for funsies doesn't mean you shouldn't get these parts, because hey, fun is fun, so have it. One great example of these just for fun parts are cable extensions. And while these aren't necessary for any build and have literally 0 performance impact, I still throw them in every single build because they make the PC look perfect. They do a really good job of just tying that build together and giving it that little chef's kiss that you didn't know you were missing. Another just for funsies part that's not actually all that fun is RGB controllers. These things suck to work with and only actually work about half the time in my experience. That being said, when they do work, they have a really fun effect of letting you control the RGB. Now, these RGB controllers will plug into either your motherboard or you can wire them up to work with your reset switch. Some cases give you a dedicated RGB button as well, which you can use to wire them up instead of that reset button. That was my preferred method because in my experience, it works way more often. I like to whisper too. Also, you don't have to deal with RGB softwares, which usually suck. Good idea. Some other just for funsies parts include expansion cards. Now, if there are extra features that you want to add to your computer, there's probably an expansion card for it. There's Wi-Fi cards, USB cards, extra storage cards, sound cards, pretty much anything technological that you could want exists. Now, for our 4th and final segment, we're going to be looking at peripherals. There's a couple of types of peripherals that you're going to be using, specifically mice, keyboards, monitors, controllers, and speakers. For keyboards, there's 2 main types. There's mechanical. Mechanical keyboards use actual switches and are a lot more satisfying. Those are the ones you see on TikTok where they clack a lot. They also tend to be more responsive, and generally I prefer them. Membrane keyboards, however, are cheaper, and if you need a budget option, those are a good stand-in. For mice, really just pick whatever you think looks good and make sure it has a good DPI or dots per inch rating. Anything above about 2400 should be just fine. For displays, you're probably going to run into either OLED or IPS panels. Both are solid choices, and really it comes down to what you prefer. OLED does tend to have some issues with burn-in, where the picture tends to stay burnt in on the screen, but it does have a ton of upsides, including generally sharper images, blacker blacks, higher refresh rates, and better viewing angles. They also tend to be a little bit more efficient. That being said, they're way more expensive. IPS panels are just a little bit worse at everything except for burn-in, but are usually cheaper and can still have really high and competitive refresh rates. When buying a monitor, the 3 things that you're going to want to be paying attention to are the display type, the refresh rate, and the resolution. We already went over the display type. With refresh rate, it's basically your monitor's FPS limit. It's measured in hertz, but tells you how many times your display can refresh per second. Anything above 60 is all right. I personally like to shoot for something about 120 or above, but bigger number means better. So if you find a good display that you like that's a high refresh rate, go for that one. And then for your resolution, it's basically that 1080p, 2K or 1440p, or 4K. If you have a lower end system, I would generally recommend sticking with 1080p because it's a lot easier to produce a good gaming experience on a 1080p display than a 4K display. However, 4K looks a lot sharper and a lot nicer because it literally has 4 times the pixels as a 1080p display will. So PCs are cool, and while all the parts may be scary for beginners, don't worry, you've got it. I hope this video did an okay job of explaining that. If you've enjoyed the content, feel free to check out some of my other videos right here. As for now, this has been Ryan. I'll catch you next time. Ryan, out.